video is about the Yellowstone Hotspot, which at present feeds the Yellowstone volcano in Wyoming. And before we begin, I'd just like to say, it's not going to erupt. Last time we talked about the Olympic-Wallowa lineament, or OWL, we speed ran the far back history of eastern Washington. We talked about how the northern reaches show us a exotic story with material that wasn't built around here, but was slammed into the coast of our state. We also used oil and natural gas wells to go down 14,000 feet to see what was down there. But that left eastern Washington covered in sandstone and not the brown rock we see today. And before we specifically talk about the brown rock, we have to talk about the power source of the brown rock, the Yellowstone Hotspot. First things first, I'm the realist. What is the power source? It's known as a mantle plume. This next part shows why I'm a geologist and not a graphic designer. What we see here in western Washington are stratovolcanoes. They're products of subduction where a oceanic plate is being subducted under a continental plate. Roughly about 60-ish miles down, it goes through melting due to the temperature of the mantle and allows molten material to come to the surface where it collects in the actual crust itself, and through additional gas processes and additional earthquakes, so on and so forth, we get our stratovolcano. Mantle plumes, on the other hand, are thought to stem from really deep down heated material from the core of our Earth, and as that material rises up, it hits the underside of our crust and kind of plumes out, or makes a mushroom shape of sorts. But do note that stratovolcanoes don't tend to move. They're pretty stationary. Hotspots, on the other hand, can. The term moving might actually fool you a little bit, as it's not the actual mantle plume itself, it's the crust over the top of it that's moving. Perhaps the most well-known example is the Hawaiian island change, which is the product of a fixed hotspot. Yellowstone, on the other hand, has been blowing holes in the Rocky Mountains for quite some time. There's also the second part of the previous statement, the age. Budding research on this is actually indicating that it might actually be about 50 million years old and may also be responsible for something that we've already talked about. Recent evidence for geologists has started to show that the material that makes up the Yellowstone hotspot is pretty darn close to the stuff that makes up the Olympics, the crescent basalts, or silencia. Remember those first two videos where I discussed with you the uppercut that Washington experienced and then all the surface faults that we have here? Yeah, that rock. Geochemistry has linked the rock of the Olympics to the rock in eastern Washington to the Yellowstone hotspot, as well as if you wind the clock back and, do the whole geophysics to determine where the plates were and all that stuff, that hotspot is pretty darn close to where it's thought silencia formed. However, competing ideas says that silencia was the product of a spreading ridge, so think a situation like Iceland. There was also a mighty suspicious gap from 40 million years to about 17 million years where there wasn't really any activity from it. So silencia and the Olympics may be related to the Columbia River flood basalts, and it may be related to the present-day Yellowstone hotspot. But one thing we know for certain, we do know for a fact that 17 million years ago was the first noticeable tract of this hotspot. And in this time, the hotspot has marched from the Oregon-Nevada border across Oregon, across Idaho, to its present location in Wyoming. But foreshadowing for our next video, the dull brown rock of eastern Washington started erupting around 17-ish million years ago. Oddly specific that the geochemistry of these rocks match as well. And the sheer size to cover eastern Washington and eastern Oregon is gonna take quite the power plant to produce that much molten material. So, we have a big old power plant. We have a bunch of dull brown rock 17 million years ago. What happens? Well, that's the next episode of the OWL series, the Columbia River flood basalts. Quick little reminder, the next couple videos are going to be about oil on the Washington coast, and oil at Ruby Beach, of all places. So I'm close to 5,000 followers, so I should be able to do a playlist relatively soon, but just know things are going to be a little out of order. Now, where's my shiny vampire?